latest React Native feature. React Native is growing fast and so is the number of feature. Last year developers contributed more than 3,670 commits to the React Native code. The number may seem impressive, but in fact it's even larger. It doesn't include the small contribution made under the React Native community organization. All that proves that React Native is developing at a really healthy pace. Contribution made by both the community and Meta enables more and more advanced use cases of the framework. A great example of that is Hermes, an entirely new JavaScript engine built and designed specifically for React Native and Android. Hermes aimed to replace the JavaScript code previously used on both Android and iOS. It also brings a lot of enterprise grade optimization by improving our Android application performance, startup time, and overall size reduction. In this section we will show you some of the features you can turn on right now to start your optimization process. We will also encourage you to keep track of all the React Native features to make sure you use the framework to its full potential. Always run the latest React Native version to access the new features. Upgrade your app to the latest version to get more features and better support. You are running an old unsupported version of React Native and depriving yourself of new improvements and features. Keeping your application up to speed with the framework you use is crucial. That is why you should subscribe to the latest feature, performance improvements, and security fixes. JavaScript ecosystem is particularly interesting in this aspect as it moves really quickly. If you don't update your app regularly, chances are your code will end up being so behind that upgrading it will become painful and risky. Every day developers from all over the world introduces new feature, critical bug fixes, and security patches. On average, each release includes around 500 commits. Over the year, React Native has grown significantly thanks to its open source contributors and Meta's dedication to improve the ecosystem. Here are some highlighted features that have been introduced to React Native over the course of its releases. Fast refresh to improve developer experience and velocity. The React Native introduced a feature called fast refresh to React Native. This lets you quickly reflect the code on the device whenever you save the file. Instead of building or reloading the app, it is smart enough to decide when to reload after we fix an error or just render. Otherwise, a tip here: the local state of functional components and hooks is preserved by default. We can override this by adding a comment to the file refresh reset, whereas class components are remounted without preserving the state. Auto linking: whenever we add native code to our React Native app as a dependency, it needs to be linked. Previously linking was done manually or using React Native link dep underscore dash name. React Native CLI introduces auto linking, so devs didn't need to link a library themselves. After a couple of years, when the React architecture of React Native was released to the community, need arose to auto-link fabric components and turbo modules, which was handled gracefully by the CLI team. They released an update to the community to help the developer experience and velocity. Flipper introduced as a recommended way of debugging React Native apps. Flipper is loaded with awesome tools such as React Dev Tools, Network Inspector, Native Layout Inspector, and others. We can also view the macro and device logs right in Flipper. The community has appreciated such feature, and one example of that is the performance plugin that we can install in Flipper to measure the performance of the React Native apps. Logbox: React Native redesigned its error and warning handle system. They have to do so from ground up. Design of its logging system developer experience is much better because of it. Developer can easily trace the cause of an error using code frames and component stack. Syntax error formatting helps to understand the issue more quickly with the aid of syntax highlighting. Log notification shows warning and logs at the bottom of the screen instead of covering the whole screen. Hermes, a new JS engine created by Meta to improve the performance of React Native app in terms of CPU usage, memory consumption, app size, and time to interactive. Initial support was launched for Android devices, but after 2 years support was extended to iOS as well. After a couple of months, the previously used garbage collector for Hermes Gen GC was replaced with a new one called HITS, a concurrent garbage collector. The Meta team saw improvements of CPU intensive workloads by 20 to 50%. Later on, the team decided to ship a bundle Hermes instead of downloading it from npm. This was done to avoid confusion between what version of Hermes is compatible with React Native. Also, both Hermes and React Native uses the same GSI code, which makes it hard to maintain. Now, whenever a new version of React Native is released, a version of Hermes can be released as well, making sure that both are fully compatible. New architecture, this one has its own chapter. In the React Native ecosystem, it's common that libraries are not backwards compatible. New feature often use good is not available in the previous version of the framework. This means that if your application runs on an older version of React Native, you are eventually going to miss out on the latest improvements. That's why keeping up with the newest React Native updates are the only way to go. Unfortunately, there is some serious work associated with upgrading your React Native code with every new release. Its amount will depend on the number of underlying changes to the native functionality and core pieces. Most of the time, you have to carefully analyze and compare your project against the latest version and make the adjustments on your own. This task is easier if you're already comfortable with moving around the native environment, but if you are like the most of us, it might be a bit more challenging. For instance, it may turn out that the modules and components you used in your code are no longer part of the React Native core. It would be because of the changes introduced by Meta during a process called the lean core. The goals of the effort were to make the React Native package smaller, more flexible, and easier to maintain by extracting some parts of the core and moving them to the React Native community repository. Transfer the maintenance of the extracted code to the community. The process accelerated the growth of a particular modules and made the whole ecosystem better organized, but it also had some negative effects on the React Native upgrading experience. Now you have to install the extracted packages as an additional dependency, and until you do, your app will not compile or crash at runtime. However, from a developer's perspective, the migration to community package is usually nothing more than introducing a new dependency or rewriting imports. Another important issue is the support of third-party libraries. Your code usually relies on external libraries, and there is risk that they might also be incompatible with the latest React Native version. There are two ways to solve this problem. Wait for the project mentor to perform the necessary adjustment before you upgrade. Look for alternative or patch the module yourself by using a handy utility called patch package, or create a temporary fork with the necessary changes. Running on an old version means shipping with issues that may discourage your user. If you are running on an older version, it is likely that you are lagging behind the competition that uses the latest version of the framework. The number of fixes, improvements, and advancement in the React Native framework is really impressive. If you are playing a game of catch up, you are opting out of a lot of updates that would make your life a lot easier. The workload and the cost involved in making React regular upgrades are always offset by the immediate DX enhancements. In this section, we present some of the well-established practices to make upgrading React Native to the newer version easier. Upgrading to the latest version of React Native. We will show you how upgrading React Native might not be the easiest thing in the world, but there are tools that can simplify the process and take most of the problems away. The actual amount of work will depend on the number of changes in your base version. However, the steps presented in this section can be applied to every upgrade regardless of the state of your application. Preparing for the upgrade. React Native Upgrade Helper is a good place to start. On a high level, it gives you an overview of the changes that have happened to React Native since the last time you upgraded your local version. To do so, the helper compares bare React Native project created by running npx React Native init with your version and the one you are upgrading to. Next, it shows the difference between projects, making you aware of every little modification that took place in the meantime. Some changes may be additionally annotated with special information that will give you more context on why something has happened. Having a better view of the overview of the changes will help you move faster and act with more confidence. Having more context is really important as there is no automation in place. When it comes to upgrading, you will have to apply the changes yourself. React Native Upgrade Help also such useful content to read while upgrading. In most cases, that includes a dedicated blog post published on the React Native blog as well as the raw change log. We advise you to read the recommended resources to get a better grip on the upcoming release and learn about its highlight. Thanks to that, you will not only be aware of the changes, but you will also understand the reasoning behind them, and you will be ready to open up your project and start working on it. Applying the JavaScript changes the process of upgrading the JavaScript part of React Native is similar to upgrading other JavaScript framework. Our recommendation here is to perform upgrade step by step, bumping one library at a time as a rule of thumb. Once you upgraded a library, save your work at that point in a commit and then move on to the next library. In our opinion, this approach is better than upgrading everything at once, as it gives you more control and makes catching regressions much easier. The first step is to bump React and React Native dependency to the desired version and perform the necessary changes, including breaking changes. To do so, you can look up the suggestion provided by React Native upgrade helper and apply them manually. Once it is completed, make sure to reinstall your node modules node. When performing the upgrade, you may see a lot of changes coming from iOS project file, everything including .xcode proj and bxproj. These are the files generated by Xcode as you work with your iOS part of React Native application. Instead of modifying the source file, better to perform the changes via Xcode UI. This was the case with upgrading to React Native 60, and the appropriate operations were described in the issues. Finally, you should try running the application. If everything is working perfect, the upgrade was smooth, and you can call it a day. On a few more serious note though, you should check if there are newer versions of other dependencies you use. They may be shipping important performance improvements. Unfortunately, there is also another more pessimistic scenario. Your apps may not build at all or may instantly crash with a red screen. In that case, it is very likely that some of your third-party dependencies are not working properly, as in some cases the dependency include native code which supports new OS features, so you need to make them compatible with your React Native version. If you have problem with your upgrade, you can check upgrade support project. It is a repository where developers share their experience and help each other solve some of the most challenging operations related to upgrading third-party libraries. In most cases, it's your React Native dependencies that you should look first. Unlike regular JavaScript React package, they often depend on native build system and more advanced React Native APIs. This exposes them to potential error as the framework matures into a more stable API. If the error occurs during build time, bumping the dependency to its latest version usually makes it work, but it may not always be the case. To make sure version of React Native you are upgrading to is compatible with your dependency, using the Align Devs project by Microsoft developer, it allows you to keep your dependencies on the right version based on the requirements and by leveraging the presets of rule. It also has a CLI, so you can wire it up to your CI and ensure that no one in your repo or monorepo will inadvertently introduce incompatible versions of packages and break the app. Once your application builds, you're ready to check the change log and make yourself familiar with the JavaScript changes that happen to the public API. If you overlook this step, it can result in runtime exception. Using Flow or TypeScript should guarantee that the changes were applied properly. As you can see, there is no magic that would fix all the errors and upgrade the dependencies automatically. This is mostly manual work that has to be done with patience and attention. It also requires a lot of testing to ensure that you didn't break any feature along the way. Fortunately, there are tools like Align Devs that help you avoid at least some of the manual work, improving the upgrading experience significantly. Benefits: you are running a latest version which translates to more feature and better support. Upgrading to latest React Native version shouldn't be different from keeping your frameworks and libraries to update. Apart from critical performance and security improvements, new React Native releases also addresses the underlying changes to iOS and Android. That includes breaking changes that apply to mobile phones, such as when certain APIs get deprecated. Here is an example. In 2019, Google announced that all Android applications submitted to Google Play after August 1st, 2019 had to be 64-bit. In order to continue developing your application, shipping new feature, you had to upgrade to React Native 0.59 and perform the necessary adjustment. Upgrades like this are really critical to keep your users satisfied. After all, they would be disappointed if the app started to crash with the newer version of the operating system or disappear from the App Store. There might be some additional workload associated with every release, but staying up to date will pay back with happier user, more stable apps and a better development experience. How to debug faster and better with Flipper. Yeah, we will see this in the next video. Thank you. Bye.